Hi, it's Soap and welcome to the video. As you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, this is going to be my June wrap-up and stats. So first, we'll go into the stats of like how many books I read and all of that. Then go into the books I read in the second half of the month, as I did a mid-month wrap-up, which I will leave linked in the description, and then if I remember in the iCard, but I always forget which side it is, so iCard somewhere. And yeah, so let's just go straight into the stats. I will pop up a graphic here so that you can see the things, and I'm going to be looking kind of off to the side because I have all the stats on my computer here. So I read 21 books in June, which ended up totaling to 6,229 pages, and my average star rating was a 3.5. Spoiler alert, I didn't have that many books that I absolutely loved in June. I listened to 3 audiobooks, I read 12 ebooks, and I read 6 physical books, 6 of which were adult, 1 was middle grade, 4 were new adult, and 10 were young adult. I read 4 contemporaries, 2 dystopian, 1 erotic, 6 fantasy, 2 magical realism, 1 mystery, and 5 romance. And I'm probably not going to go too in detail about what these books are about, because I'm in kind of like a filming slump, so I just want to get this done. And also, for a lot of these, especially if I gave it a lower rating, I'm not going to have that many thoughts on it. But the first book that I read, or that I'm going to talk about in this video, is Queen by Katie Robert, which is the 3rd and final book in the Bloodline Vampire series. The first book, which is Sacrifice, and in Sacrifice we follow Mina, who she's essentially half vampire, and her father has been controlling her entire life, and her father sends her to this place to basically essentially get knocked up and create a new like bloodline of vampires with this like powerful vampire. And the plans change, things are happening. This is a like smutty paranormal reverse harem series, and I gave Queen 2.5 stars because the characters felt so different from the first 2 books. It felt so rushed, and the ending, I was like, I don't even know what is going on, but it was nice to finish off a series, so yeah. Next is Origins of an Academy Bully by Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti. This is the like prequel novella to the Zodiac Academy series. I think it's set 4 years before, and we are following the characters of Orion and Darius as an event happens that is mentioned in the main Zodiac Academy series. This is like a fantasy series. Like the Zodiac Academy is like a fantasy bully romance series that takes place in an academy. And I gave this 3 stars because it was good, but I felt like it could have been longer, and I also like, I personally, even though I've already met the characters of Darius and Orion in the like first 3 books, because that's what I've read so far, they felt so different. And yes, it could be because they are 4 years younger, but they just didn't feel like the characters that I knew, therefore I didn't enjoy them as much. And honestly, the plot was just a little bit like not amazing, but I am glad I read it because it was short and it was a part of the series. The next book is Spellbound by Carolyn Schultz, and this I gave 4 stars. This, we follow Emma, who has to move to New York to live with her aunt after things happen, and as she attends this new school and meets these new people, things start becoming a little bit different, and this is like a magical realism. I'm trying to figure out how to describe it, and this is just like a magical realism. There is like, there's light fantasy elements, but it's like in a contemporary setting. Kind of think like kind of urban fantasy, but like not quite. I am honestly horrible at describing this. But I enjoyed it. This is my best friend Morgan's favorite book, and I buddy read it with them, and so yeah. Speaking of Morgan and buddy reading, Serpentis Claim by Marina Simcoe. This I gave 4 stars. This is the sequel to Serpent's Touch, where essentially we follow Amira. Basically, she works at this like menagerie type place, and when she meets somebody, they end up trying to escape to this world that the guy is from, and it is a fantasy, kind of like a fantasy romance. Serpentis Claim wasn't as good as Serpent's Touch because Serpentis Claim was more of like, I feel like it went in an entirely different direction than I wanted it to. So yeah. And The Love That Split the World by Emily Henry was my first DNF of the month. This essentially follow Natalie, who basically all these little things start going different, of like things aren't where they're supposed to be, colors of buildings are different, and buildings go completely missing, and she's told by this mysterious old lady figure that she has 3 months to save him, and she has no idea who this him is. So she has to figure out who it is, and I DNF'd this at about 130 pages in because I just wasn't enjoying it. I didn't feel connected to any of the characters, and the plot was like meh. To be fair, I do think this was I think that this was Emily Henry's first book, if I'm not mistaken. So you can definitely tell it feels like a first novel. I do think that I might go back at some point. Like, I'm not officially like DNFing it, getting rid of it. I'm just like, it just wasn't the fit for what I wanted to read this month. And I only had 2 5 stars this month, both of which are rereads. You can see the first one in my like mid-month wrap-up, and then the second one is If This Gets Out by Sophie Gonzalez and Cale Dietrich. This was a reread for me, but this essentially follows Zach and Ruben, who are 2 members of this famous boy band called Saturday, and they are just about to go on their first like European tour. And while they are on tour, they realize that there are feelings for each other. Those feelings develop into a relationship, and it's them having to figure out how to tell their friends, how to tell their management, how to tell their fans. And I just really loved this book because it talks about like interesting topics that typically aren't brought up in media, or at least to like that I personally haven't experienced in media, of like management companies controlling artists and like things like that, when it's like, as an onlooker into that type of world, you don't think about all those things of like, oh, was that thing that that person said in the interview genuine, or was that their management company telling them that that's their type of answer? And I also just love this because it is like queer, it is such fun, the audiobook is amazing, and yeah. The next book I read is A Reaper at the Gates by Saboteur. I did have the physical copy of this, but I had to return it to my library because the loan was due. But this is the 3rd book in the An Ember in the Ashes series. I'm not really going to describe the first book because the 3rd book is now so different. But this I gave a 3.5 stars. It was really good, but I felt like because we had 3 different point of views, I felt myself always being drawn to the one character's point of view. So when I was reading the other characters' point of views, I was like, I just want to get back to this one character. And so like I will be reading A Sky Beyond the Storm, which is the 4th and final book in the series, in July here, so I can wrap up the series because I'm enjoying it a lot. It's just the first book so far has been my favorite. The next book I read was Screwed by Tori Heat, and this is a adult dystopian romance where essentially we follow Mila, I think is the main character's name, where essentially we are in this dystopian world where kind of everything's gone to shit, and Mila ends up getting kidnapped by this group of people, and she realizes that in this group of people is her ex-fiance that she hasn't seen in about 10 years, and it is a like second chance romance almost. This I gave 3 stars because 1, didn't really like the characters that much, 2, I didn't understand the main concept, I don't think. And 3, it was like the writing was just okay. Like, I did really enjoy reading it, but it was just kind of more of like a, I read it for the sake of reading it because I had it as an arc. I still actually need to write the review for that. Oops. But yeah, 3 stars. Like, it wasn't good, it wasn't bad, it was just a book I read. Next we have Starters by Alyssa Price, and this I also gave 3 stars. This essentially we follow Callie, who after everyone between the ages of 20 and 60 die, there is this new technology that is brought in that basically allows the older people of the world to like put their subconscious into the body of a teenager, and this provides the teenagers with a lot of money. Callie agrees to do this, but when this procedure goes a little wrong and Callie wakes up in her body when she shouldn't, she needs to figure out why. And that was a horrible description, but this, it was good. I read this in one day, so it was kind of addictive of like, I need to see how it ends, but it just, there was a couple of things that were just a little off for me, and like, I kind of almost just read this out of like, oh, my TBR game, put it on my TBR, and I've owned it for a while, and it's only a duology, and just like, it was good. But that's it. It was just good. Like, the characters were like mediocre. Like, they weren't amazing, they weren't horrible, the plot wasn't amazing, wasn't horrible, it was just borderline like mediocre. So 3 stars. The next is Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller, which I also gave 3 stars. I had a run of where 3 books in a row were 3 stars. But essentially, Daughter of the Pirate King, we follow Alosa, I think that's how her name's pronounced, I don't know, but basically we follow Alosa, who she ends up allowing herself to get kidnapped by these pirates in order to find this map that will lead to this great treasure that her father is trying to find, and that is the basic premise. That's all I understood. This book, I had really high hopes of it. I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be amazing, it's pirates, it's like enemies to lovers, yada yada yada. But I didn't really care about any of the characters or the journey. I will say the only reason I like this is because of the love interest, Raiden, I think is his name, because I really enjoyed his character. That is the like highlight, is Raiden as a character. But I will be reading the second book because it's only a duology, and I do kind of want to see if it gets a little better, or if it stays the same, or if it gets worse. So, next we have Above the Shop by Chloe Main. This was a book that Morgan decided, hey, let's buddy read this, and I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. And so this essentially we follow Summer, who she ends up going to the town that she's going to university in the fall early, and she ends up staying with a friend of her mother's, and it is a romance between Summer and her mom's friend. Everybody is of legal age. So it is an age gap romance, but it was, I think I found my least favorite romance book ever, because everything was so cringe. I hated the characters. I literally finished it out of spite, almost. I literally finished it solely just to say I finished it. I gave it a 1.5. That's being generous, too. That's being generous. I hated it. There was so many moments I was like, can I just pretend I didn't read that? Yeah. I just, no. I just hated it. The next book I read was All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover, and I gave this 4 stars. This is my lowest rated Colleen Hoover book. But this, essentially, we follow Quinn and Graham, and we are seeing 2 different points in time. One is when they are first meeting and first dating, and then also when they are going through marital problems and are borderlining divorce. And we are seeing just how their relationship's starting and how it's going to shit. And it was an emotional mess for me because it had the topic of infertility, and that is my biggest fear, is like never being able to have kids. So like just reading that, and I was just like, and also I know people that have infertility issues, so it was kind of like close to home. Like I have family members that suffer through infertility, and I've seen firsthand the struggles that they faced, so it kind of like hits a little close to home. But like I didn't connect with the characters as much as I have with other Colleen Hoover books, so yeah. The next book I read and DNF was Family of Liars by E. Lockhart. This is the prequel to We Were Liars, which I read like 2 years ago, I think. And with Family of Liars, I didn't like any of the characters. I only read 50 pages. But I didn't connect with any of the characters within those first 50 pages. I kind of like I just did not like it. And honestly, like, I don't see a need to it. I've heard mixed things about it, and so I'm on the side of like, I just didn't like it. And the final book that I read in June was The Weeping Tide by Amanda Foody. This is the sequel to The Accidental Apprentice, where we follow Barclay, who he ends up bonding with a beast and becoming a lore keeper. Lore keepers are basically people that bond with beasts, and they have like magical abilities. And so the first book is set kind of in the forest, and now we're in the ocean, and like it's just a wild ride. It's a middle grade. It is so cute. I loved it so much. I gave it 4 stars because there was a couple moments I was just like kind of almost like, can we just get through this? But I love the characters so much. I mean, Amanda Foody is a favorite author, so I'm kind of not surprised that I love this, and I also now need to get my hands on copies of these for myself because I borrowed this from my library. I did also listen to the audiobook, and one thing I love about middle grades is I can literally put the audiobook when I'm reading the physical book with it to like a 2.6. I literally think I was reading it at that by the end, because I was just like, okay, got the grasp of the narrator, got the grasp of the story, let's go. And I flew through this. I literally think I read the last half of the book in like 3 or 4 hours. And I'm very excited for the third book, which I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but I probably will be pre-ordering that so I can start getting my hands on copies of these books. So that was the wrap up. I really hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what is one book that you read in June. I almost forgot what month we're doing this wrap up for. But let me know one book that you read in June, or if you've read any of these. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and bye!